everyone. I hope you are all safe and well. I am Jenn Drakes, and welcome to the One Life Fully Lived podcast. I am passionate about life and definitely passionate about living it to the fullest. Today, I want to discuss the outward versus inward debate. Some of you are probably thinking, what is that? And I will shed some light as I continue, but let me first explain how I even got to the topic. So I'm a sporadic thinker. I always describe my brain as one filled with sparks. Picture a campsite fire and all the ember like flying up doing this beautiful dance over the main fire. Who doesn't love that? As a child, I would follow my sparks in the same way kids follow blown bubbles, trying to catch them and play with them. Now, the outward appearance of me following that spark is distraction, daydreaming, or having a vivid imagination. In French, I love the term they use, which is dans la lune. So you can imagine the kind of reports my mom received for parent-teacher interviews. Oh, I dreaded those. I hated when those things came around. The feedback she would come back with would be things like, she has so much potential. If only she would pay more attention. Year after scholastic year, I heard, pay more attention, pay more attention, pay more attention. But the honest truth is that the sparks in my brain were far more interesting than what most teachers taught. What the school and the teachers never realized is if you got my attention and I actually focused and applied myself, it was because the work you were given was fascinating to me and I could focus on it and I enjoyed it. If what you said was delivered in this kind of theoretical way, you lost my attention. Or if I got the information very quickly and processed it very quickly, you lost my attention. And I found my own brain a little bit more interesting than sometimes what was going on around me. And this podcast is fueled by my passion for life and the one each of us has to live. And another passion I have, or fascination I have, is with how my brain works and certainly how the brain of others work. And I could probably run another podcast on that. Those close to me are probably chuckling now because they're always affectionately saying how different I am in my thinking. And I've come over the years to realize, you know what? They're right. I am. And that's okay. One thing I want those listening to know is exactly that. It is okay to be or seem different. In fact, I would urge you to consider it a bloody compliment because those differences are what makes the world so rich in texture and interest. For me, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a world that did not put labels on people. Today, I'm convinced I would have been considered ADD or ADHD or some other psychological label. Hopefully, some of you listening can relate. Now, I could go on for a long time on this aspect of things, but I'm actually driving to an important point. And how does this tie into today's topic? Well, I was taking a course, and something someone said ignited one of those sparks in my brain, and that spark gave me pause to reflect on outward versus inward. Here's what I mean. Is it not amazing how easy it is to expend energy on those and things around us? We expend energy believing in others, instilling confidence in others. When you spend time watching sports, that's exactly what you're doing. You're expending outward energy. You are cheering a particular team. You're cheering for particular players. You are expending energies. When you watch a reality show and you're rooting for whoever it is in the reality show, you are expending energy on others. And we tend to find that easier to do than to actually stop a moment and put that same energy into ourselves. Now, parents who are listening can easily relate to this, I would think, because as parents, a lot of our energy goes into our children. And today we're seeing the same thing of extreme amount of outward energy with the COVID-19 situation because we are expending energy outward, offering understanding and compassion to others. We're expending energy outward as we monitor the situation. And for some, they are monitoring the situation on a minute-by-minute basis. And putting energy into those things are all appropriate things to do. My message is not that it's inappropriate. My message is not one of stopping doing those things. However, I look at appropriate dimensionally, meaning how much and in what ways and to what degree. From my "you are different" lens, here is what is not appropriate. It is not appropriate when we don't do those same things for ourselves. Meaning, far too often, the energy goes outward more frequently, more rapidly, and it rarely ever goes inward. Think about how you felt the last time you directed time and energy back to you. I'm sure you were smiling, energetic, especially when telling someone of that moment. So now imagine how fulfilled you would be believing in yourself, boosting your confidence, or taking time to understand you with the same love and compassion you offer up to others. Anyone who has a thought of selfishness, this is not selfishness. It is not the same. So think about what prevents you from doing just that. What prevents you from taking a portion of your energy and redirecting it inwardly to fuel yourself? What prevents you from doing just that? Here's what we need to understand. Many times when we feel drained and depleted, it is because of continuously expending outward energy. We see this proven with motivational speakers push us to go after things that give you passion. Things that you would do for free because you love and you find joy in it. Things that you would spend all your time on and it would never feel like work, and time passes without complaint. We've heard it from the Oprah Winfreys of this world. We've heard it from the Tony Robbins of this world. That very push is all about outward versus inward. No matter how you look at it, if you find what fuels you and you fire it up and you stroke yourself by growing that fire, then you create a rich, fertile ground to draw upon to nurture others. I would argue you have more to give others. Energy directed inward fuels us, and it enables us to function at peak performance levels for sustained durations. What I need you to take away from this podcast is that pushing your energy outward without holding back some for inward fueling is going to leave you feeling lost, empty, depleted. It's going to age you quicker. Getting the right interplay of outward and inward results in all the opposite outcomes. You feel grounded, you feel fulfilled, you feel energized, you feel youthful, you feel optimistic. Another aspect of this is men seem to be better at this interplay than women. Many men push to retain some of the things they hold dear in their life. They're good with routine. For example, some will continue to connect with the boys to play sports, hockey, basketball, or soccer, or some other kind of sport. I know some who continue to go to the gym on a daily basis even after they're married. But women, they tend to abandon the things they love after they get married, and even worse, after having children. Last year, someone I knew literally died as a result of pushing all their energy outward. Their husband of over 50 years was diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer. I always get those two confused, but dementia or Alzheimer. And she went all in caring for him. She felt it was her duty as his wife. Except what she didn't consider and failed to understand, that she herself was elderly. Granted, she didn't look like a senior. She looked darn good for her age, but she was. So she decided, keep him at home, don't put him in an institution, and she jumped all in with a rigorous daily routine. But as the condition progressed, he became difficult to manage. He was on that spectrum where he became difficult to manage. And friends and loved ones that visited were concerned because they could see that she was physically and mentally exhausted. And they could also see that she faced belligerence from the husband, and that was making the caregiving role even harder. She was finally convinced to get in-home help and support, but it was more like checkpoint visits, to come in once, twice a week to check in. Then one day, one of those checkpoint visits discovered her body. She had jumped all in so much that she left nothing for herself. And by the time she tried to make changes, it was a little too late. She had been completely depleted. Family and friend were told she died from exhaustion. I'm not, never knew that was possible. It was shocking. It was shocking. If someone out there knows what the proper medical term, let me know. I can only tell you what we were told. She died from exhaustion. I didn't share this suggesting this as an outcome for all. Of course, I know it isn't. But I want those listening to think about to what degree you are living like this. To what degree are you off balance in the outward push of energy versus the inward push to refuel? So here are some things you can do to start resetting. First, become aware if you're guilty of doing this. I know I was. I love bicycle riding, but I didn't ride for 8 years. 8 solid years I didn't ride. And by the time the 8th year came around, I had even forgotten how much I loved that sport. I had actually forgotten. It just so happens I got on a bike, I started riding, and I felt like I was 10 years old again, and all the memories came back and all of the enjoyment of my childhood riding my bike, because my bike was my transportation, as it is for for many kids. But in those days, you could ride away from home and be safe. So I used to go all over the place on my bike. But I literally forgot how much I loved it until after 8 years, I got back on one, and I went back to being a 10-year-old on that bike, and I've never put the bike down since. I love bicycle riding. So I am guilty of doing this. I was anyway. I'm not so much anymore. And so my hand is up. You can't see it, but my hand is up. But here's one thing I learned. I also know the payback was minuscule in comparison to the outlay of energy. When you put all your energy outward, the payback is minuscule. We see that when parents overindulge a child, the child becomes difficult. When they get older, they can. I'm not saying every child is, but I've seen that the parents that overindulge the child, they put so much energy into the child, their payback is minuscule in comparison. And if you're out there and you're listening to me and you can relate and think of situations like that, nod your head. The payback is minuscule in comparison to the outlay of energy. So I want you to become aware. And I want you to commit to try something different. I'm not asking you to stop the outward push, only to lower the amount and recoup some back for you. So think of that full glass. So if a glass is full, and do the 80-20 rules, try to start with 20% coming back to you, and the other 80% continue to push outward, depending on your life situation. But if you need an extra 10%, take the extra 10% and you start to put 30% back in. You start to recoup 30% for you, and you only push out 70%. So play around with what percent you need at what point in time. But what I'm only asking of you is to lower the amount and recoup some of that energy back for you. Set some time aside each day to reconnect with who you are and what you need. I'll give you another example. In high school, my daughter had an assignment to do a collage of things she loved or held dear or aspired to do. When she told me about the assignment, I thought the assignment and the teacher was brilliant. I really did. Especially doing something like that at the critical teenage years. Teaching teenagers to be self-reflective, now that is life skill teaching at its best. And I also remember when I saw the results of that assignment, I was floored by how accurately it reflected the essence of my daughter. So I did what I hope most parents would do. I framed it. I framed the collage. And in presenting her with the framed collage, I told her these words. I said to her, life will hit you with ups and downs. Right? Life will hit you with ups and downs. And I pointed at the print and I said, this collage is the essence of you. When life hits you with a downturn that makes you feel like you have lost your way, or that you are disconnected in some way, or that you are no longer on the right or sure path, come to this collage to remember all the things you felt and aspired to do. Use this as your beacon to get back grounded. And that picture hangs on our wall. And whenever she gets her own place, well, that picture will go with her and it will sit somewhere prominent in her home because that is her beacon. So for all those who find this podcast resonates for you, set time aside to reconnect with yourself. Start a journal. Journaling is fantastic. If you never journaled before, start journaling. Start small. Start journaling. I'm always encouraging people to keep a journal. Do what my daughter did. Create a collage of all things that you love and are interested in and that appeals to you. And then look at that collage and say, what does it tell me? Because if you do it organically and just let your spirit guide you, it will be about you. It should reflect the essence of who you are. The other thing I would suggest, but with social distancing, I have to adapt it a bit. I would have suggested that you visit a bookstore and you just amble through the different aisles, and you just look at these books and go, what appeals to me, and take your hand and pull whatever word or title or whatever just kind of catches your attention. Just pull it and browse it and see where you tend to be more pulled towards, right? So just go. But in lieu of, I can't tell you to go into a physical bookstore and see what titles shot out to you. I'm going to ask you to scroll through virtual bookstores and try to do the same. And hopefully it gives the same feeling, right? What would you, if you could search for a book, what type of book would you search for? What, would it be a science fiction? Would it be a fantasy? Would it be a nonfiction? Would it be biography? What type of thing would you search for? Another thing that you can do is sit silently and reflect on where your mind is going. Not so much, not meditate necessarily, because meditation isn't easy for everybody. So in lieu of meditating, just sit silently and listen to what's going through, or pay attention to what's going through your mind, what sparks are happening in your mind, and follow them. Follow the spark. Explore the spark. Evaluate the spark. And then consider what it may be telling you. Are you fulfilled? Are you happy? I remember years ago having a conversation with a dear friend of mine. And somehow it just randomly came out where the conversation led to me saying, are you happy? And I was floored when the response that came back to me was no. Because from all outward appearances, there was never any indication they were unhappy. But by asking the direct question, I got a direct response of no. So are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you living your best life? What do you need? Today, at this point in your life, what do you need? And depending on what you need, what will it take to get that? And depending on what it takes to get that, what things are holding you back? What amount of energy do you recoup to start moving in that direction? Will the inward stroking and refueling be small? As simple as introducing regular massages, a spa day here and there, a trip somewhere, weekend, 3-day Vegas trip, who knows, some kind of trip. Or is the inward stroking larger? Meaning change paths, change direction, do some kind of pivot, change something in your life. And then depending on all those things, what are small steps versus medium steps versus larger steps to get from where you are today to your Z point and what you want and what you need? Think about the outward versus inward debate. If you feel you've got this locked down, great, fabulous, huge kudos to you. I applaud you. But if you feel you don't, or you feel you need more work to get there, then I'm going to ask you to take action. Take action. Don't just sit and just do your routine and go through one day after another. Take action. Because one aspect to living a full life is balancing the outward and the inward strokes you give yourself. I'm going to repeat that again. One aspect to living a full life is balancing the outward and the inward strokes you give yourself. And we need to get better at doing that. I am Jenn Drakes. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, then please follow the show and please share the love. We'll be chatting soon.